If you're interested in supply chain optimization, artificial intelligence, or what it's like to raise money for an AI first technology company, this episode of the Decision Intelligence Lab podcast with Ganesh Ramakrishna is one that you're not going to want to miss. Stay tuned.
Talk to customers. You don't need a product to talk to customers. You just need an idea and a willing audience. And the willing audience is right there for you. You just have to pick up the phone and call. People want to know what you want to work on, right? And you can show your idea and get like 50 data points in response before you even write the first line of code. So we did that a lot, talked to a lot of customers. So I think that's part of the product market fit, getting that customer feedback and giving it back to engineering, saying, hey, this is what we need to build. This is what we need to build. And shaping the last 20% before we have design partners. Once you have design partners, they drive the remaining 20%.
Hello, welcome to the podcast. Today, we're happy to have Ganesh Ramakrishna as our guest. So I've known Ganesh a long time. We're good friends, former colleagues, and have helped build a company together. Ganesh is now building a new company. So welcome to the podcast, Ganesh.
Thank you, Mike. And hi, Vijay.
Great to be here. Great to have you here, Ganesh.
Thank you so much.
So let's kick off, Ganesh. You started up Lyric several years ago. Like, what was your initial vision for Lyric? Like, what challenges are you trying to address?
Got it, Mike. It dovetailed exactly what we built at Opex together. So what did we do at Opex? We provided supply chain data science as a service. Right? If you go back to what we were doing, in 2013, Mike and I left IBM to say, hey, machine learning is hot. We understand operations research very well. We think the combination of the two would be very, very powerful to solve hard supply chain operations problems. That's how we went out to market, right? Right, Mike?
Yep.
Good. Now, we were software people wanting to build a software company in 2013. What we discovered was it was super hard to build machine learning as a software. It was very, very hard. You could do machine learning work, but it was hard to package it and sell it as software. That forced us to pivot out of building software to say, let's provide this as a service. And we provided supply chain innovation services. Think of it that way, right? So we worked with some of the best brands in the world, built that company over 8 years and had a very nice exit first to LlamaSoft. And that company got sold to Coupa, right? At that point, I left Coupa. Mike was nice to stay on for another year, Mike. Was it a year?
Another year, yes.
Coupa? Right. So I left. Took a nice 9-10 month break, almost a year break. And then Vijay, it struck me that I can't sit at home and do nothing. I want to do something.
That's harder than it looks, isn't it?
It is super hard, my friend.
I got to understand, to be a world-class slacker, those people have been training their entire lives. You can't walk in off the street and try to compete as a slacker.
Slacker, even if you don't call them slackers, but I would say, to sit still is one of the hardest things in life.
Yes.
I have a lot of respect and admiration now for people who can sit still and not do anything. Amazing, right? So good for them. I was not one of those types, and I want to do something. So the first instinct was to say, let's get away from whatever I was doing and do something completely different. And so I said, hey, let's go figure out whether we should do blockchain and crypto. That didn't go too well. And then I looked at ideas in mentoring platforms. One thing that stayed with me after those, attempts at doing something else was, you got, as an entrepreneur, you got to work on something where you have compounded knowledge, compounded networks, and where you can stay with the problem. So Vijay, one thing I discovered is I couldn't stay with those problems. They're very interesting problems to solve, but I couldn't stay with them. So it was very clear to me that the area that I will work on in the future will be at the intersection of supply chain operations, 1, 2, algorithms, and then software. If I can stay at the intersection of those 3 things, I will do fine. And that's how the idea of Lyric was born, Mike. Like, hey, we're going to do something at the intersection of those 3 things.
So Ganesh, let me pick up on that. Can you talk about the critical environmental changes from the time that you started Opex to the time that you started Lyric, and how those are working to your advantage?
Yes. Great question. Right? The world has changed. I'll tell you what, let's keep the whole, Gen AI, agentic AI stuff on the side for a minute. We'll come there. Right?
We'll get there.
But even without that, there's a landscape that Mike is a big fan of. I'm a big fan of. That's called the MAD landscape, right? That's machine learning, analytics, and data, if I'm not wrong. It's called the MAD landscape. It's a VC called Firstmark that puts that out. If you look at that MAD landscape from circa 2015 versus what it looks like today, that landscape tells the full story. Right? It used to be like 100 to 200 vendors that thought about this space, machine learning, AI, analytics, and data landscape versus what it is in 2023, 2024 version of that thing. There are 3,000 vendors. And they're not all commercial vendors. It includes major open source projects as well. So in our world, I think if we can think about the algorithms, which, the VCs called machine learning, and then data, landscape, and compute, the world has completely changed. The raw ingredients that are available for us to solve these hard problems have completely changed. And that, I think, is like the number one thing that has changed for us. Like the ingredients are very different. The second thing is the market awareness and the market interest to go from a very process-driven software to a very algorithms-driven software. That helps a lot too, right? So I think those are the two things, Vijay. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I feel you very much on that. I started my data science consulting company in 1994.
Wow.
When the term data science didn't exist. And so the world has progressed quite a bit, and I feel like moving faster at a faster rate. Now,
100%.
So most of our audience doesn't have much experience with early stage startups or with fundraising. So walk us through kind of your journey from initial capital to your latest round, and just give us an overview. I'll have some follow-up questions about that as we do.
Absolutely. I think the first question to answer is, in that world is, what is the incentive for an institutional investor, which we call a VC, to invest in a business? Right? I think when you start a business, it's super important. And I think Mike and I did a great job of saying, in our previous business, saying, look, because there were other firms who raised venture capital that looked like our previous business, but they raised a lot of capital. Two things need to be true. One is the scale of the ambition. You cannot and you should not fundraise when you don't have scaled ambition. And I think many times when you're doing a company for the first time, it's very hard to have scaled ambitions, right? But you could. I'm not saying there's always a Zuckerberg, even in the OR community, right? So I'm not ruling that possibility out, but generally 8 out of 10 ideas do not have scaled ambition. Venture is not a great place to go because they are looking for outsized returns. They're really in the market for looking for 100x returns, 20x returns, 10x returns, depending on the stage at which they come in, right? So it's super important to understand that, right? So I think everything starts with that. And the other thing is, how far do you want to go, right? Because this is a hard journey, right? So once you know that it's the right fit, then the mechanics are fairly straightforward, which I can get into that. But let me pause and give you a chance to react.
No, that's terrific. So that from a general framework perspective,
yes,
you've kind of identified a clear filter. If you don't have big ambitions and make a case for kind of addressable market being huge, don't bother to raise venture money. So that's right. The general case. Let's talk about the lyric case. So
yes.
The other thing that's worth mentioning is that in the age of open source tools and Linux and all these things, we maybe don't need as much capital to start.
Yes.
And to get going.
Only to start.
But I'd love to hear where you guys started.
Yes. So one clarification. It's very easy to get started today. No doubt about it. Like, cost of building software is coming down. But if you want to be a vendor, if you want to be a software provider, if the cost of software is going down, what it does is the expectation from the customer goes up. And so when a seed stage company walks in, you could sell a product with 10 features 10 years ago. Now they expect 100 features because your competition can punch out 100 features, not 10 features. So the market settles, right? So it's just the expectation on what you do with the money you have changes because the cost of getting started is free. Everybody knows that, right? So that's a clarification I want to give. In the case of Lyric, again, we were very fortunate when you start out, obviously you can start with zero budget and you can just go build and go, if you know how to code. So not everybody knows how to code. So that's a problem. If you know how to code, you may only be an algorithm specialist. You may not know how to design well. You may not know how to build a great front end. You may not know how to do DevOps. So you need some support cast around you to build software. And if it's your friends, they are co-founders. If it's you have to hire somebody, you have to pay them, right? In equity or cash. So that's not that hard to understand. In our case, we raised some capital right at the outset, right? That was from friends and family. So we raised about $2 million from friends and family. And that was to go fast right at the get-go. We didn't want to be like, even the experiments we ran were fast experiments. We started with a team of 6 to 8 people to do the first build. With that $2 million, we got to the point where we had a MVP is a loose term, but a product that we could show to our customer, right? And they could give quality feedback. We worked with them for about 5 months. When they were ready to give us money is when, Vijay, we were saying, hey, look, now that customers are paying us, we could go raise institutional capital. And that's when I raised what we call a seed round. So the stages are very easy. Pre-seed today, the first check is the pre-seed check, which is like no revenue, no ideas formed, no revenue. I have a team that is working on this problem. That's typically the pre-seed stage. Then when you have some traction in the business, you go raise what is called a seed stage, right? And then once that's typically these days about $300,000 to $500,000, not million, 300 to 500,000 in revenue. That's a good sweet spot. And that's a lot of work to get to that point. And then once you cross that barrier, then you go to the A, B, and C, and the milestones are different for each one of those stages.
Well, let's talk about the milestones that you guys achieved and how long it took before you felt like you had a story to take for an A round.
Yeah, so for us, we did the seed stage. That was very easy. Like, as I said, like that was the first institutional capital that came in. That was through Primary Venture Capital. That's out of New York, right? That was at around 300, 400K in ARR, annual recurring revenue. That's another clarification. Vijay, by the way, not all revenues are equal. If you get paid X amount of money and there is no guarantee for seeing that money again the next year and the year after that, which is recurring revenue, that's services revenue, right? So that doesn't get bucketed the same way. So you're looking for recurring revenue when you raise capital. That's what the metric the customers, the VC is looking for.
Let me break in, just ask one clarifying question. So just to be clear, like your scaled ambitions, but I thought it was a good way to think about it. Like you knew you wanted to raise money because you wanted to go big. But the other thing that you've told me in the past, and you can confirm this, is that you wanted to be a software company, which is what you're getting at here. Like you just wanted to be sell software, not do the consulting. At Opex, we found consulting revenue could be easy to get, but you are not going to take that track.
Yes, and because consulting, of that, no, 100%. If yes, so venture capital, 90 out of 100 times is reserved for software companies. There is an edge case for services companies, but that's definitely still the edge case. It's not the norm. So if you want to start a data science consulting company, if you want to start an OR consulting company, unlikely venture capitalists would be interested in. Unlikely. I don't want to say never. There's always a play. There's always a taker. It's a market. But unlikely that you're going to find venture capital. Yes, Mike. That's a good clarification. Right. So where were we? I forgot.
So you guys had. So I was really you were articulating kind of what your milestones were before you went out to get an A round.
Yeah. So you typically want to cross $1 million in revenue. That's like the low bar. Like below $1 million, it's very, very hard. And what we got done in our case was slightly different because A round is typically like you go socialize with a bunch of VCs. What we got done is an insider round, what is called an insider round. So we were building the business. Somebody looked at our business, saying, "Hey, I can contribute a lot to your business," and that comes from our network. I can do a lot for your business if you can do a round with me. It's not labeled A or C plus kind of round. So I looked at the opportunity. That's permanent capital. it was a great fit for what we were doing. They were an amazing fit for what we were doing, and we did a deal. Like, so whether we should call it C plus or A, it's hard to tell. It's some of it is like I'm guessing a lot of your audience has a PhD kind of background. It's like choosing a professor versus choosing a school. Like, so picking a VC is like saying, are you going to go for that great institution, right? But an okay professor in that great institution? Are you going to go for this great professor at an institution that is not necessarily as well known yet, right? So it's a little bit of this very, very similar trade-off, actually.
Excellent. And so you guys just announced kind of more publicly, hey, we've raised $23 million to date. Was that so? At this stage, with your last raise, where are you targeting those proceeds? How much of that ballpark is targeted for engineering versus sales and marketing versus support? Kind of what does that picture look like? And then, Mike, I promise we're going to turn it back to supply chain stuff.
Okay. I like the VC stuff.
No, I like the line of questioning because this is not something I think OR people generally tend to talk about, right? So I love it. So what we raised, right? So I think it's very important to understand also, like, when you're building these software companies, how much of that money has to be spent in sales and marketing. I know there are people who love the idea of writing software. And, when a software vendor walks up to you and says, hey, here's a software that does X or Y or Z. And you're like, in your mind, hey, I can put a database together. I can write these massive algorithms that will solve the problem. I'll stick it behind Gurobi. I'll put a decent front end. What else is there to this? I should be able to build it, right? And I don't think it's unfair assessment. So I'm not going to fight that assessment. But what is missed? Two things are missed. One is how expensive it is to maintain code than to build code. It's 10 times more expensive to maintain code, right, than to build code. That's one. Mike and I have intrinsic understanding of that. But the second thing that is not understood by the engineering mind is how expensive it is to sell software. Right? You can pick up the annual report of any major software company and see how much money they're spending in sales and marketing. It is a 60 cents on the dollar, 50 cents on the dollar for a very mature company. Sometimes it's more than $1. So if you get $1 of recurring revenue from a customer, you spent more than $1 to get that revenue. So you're making a loss just based on fundamental math. Even if you're a one-person army, you're going to lose money. Right? So that is lost. So when you think about allocations, so that's one clarifying point, Vijay. But in our case, early journey, this is my second company, so I could lead a lot of selling. So the first 2.5 years, the sales and marketing cost was close to zero. Right? One of my co-founders, she's an amazing marketing lady. So Sarah Hurman, Mike, she can market the hell out of any software. So she does the marketing, I do the sales, and that's how we manage the sales and marketing costs. So a lot of the investment went straight to research, to product development. So in our case, our engineering and algorithms team, Vijay, do you want to take a guess on how many people we have doing engineering and algorithm work inside Lyric today?
I'll take a wild guess and say 25.
We're almost 100 people.
Oh my gosh.
Doing that work, right? So no more than 30 people who are not in that kind of stuff. So we're 100% product. Again, that comes from the advantage of having done this before. But moving forward, we will have a big sales and marketing cost.
One quick thing on the investment. I think you said a good point that I think OR founders need to hear is that your initial sales and marketing cost was basically zero in some sense because you had a huge opportunity cost. You and Sarah couldn't get your hands in any of the fun supply chain, any of the fun algorithms, any of the fun engineering. You were facing the customer.
Oh,
that is where you're investing in sales.
Thank you so much because if you want to be a founder, give up on having fun. It's counterintuitive. I mean, you should love the idea of building a business to be fun. But if you think you're going to sit and write magic formulations and doing great work yourself, no. Your job is to make a business. Your job is to not write software. You may be able to do that for maybe 3 to 6 months, even if you're an engineering first founder. But after that, you're not going anywhere close to it, right? So that's something to be. If you love programming and if you love engineering, don't be the CEO founder. Be something else in the firm.
Actually, Ganesh, I got a follow-up question there that I think
Yeah.
will bring us organically back to some of the supply chain stuff that I
Yeah.
still hope to dig into. And that is, as you're out there in the field, one of the advantages you have of facing prospects and facing customers is to dial in product market fit.
Mhm.
Tell us what that journey was like and what the key learnings were of these first couple of years and how that's kind of shaped the product direction.
No, absolutely. So I think, again, product market fit, I think you need to go in, again, very, very biased with my personal experiences. So it may not work for everybody. I think you got to walk in with a strong thesis, right? Very, very strong thesis that the market needs this thing and I'm going to build it, whatever that product be. And that better be 90% of what the product will end up looking like, or 80% of what you're looking for. There are some amazing entrepreneurs, right? Like the guy who built Slack, right?
Yeah, I know the story.
You could be doing a video game one day and next day you'll turn around and build Slack, right? So there are those people too. And you could be one of those. I'm not saying you could not be that person, but for most of us mere mortals, it's very, very hard to do those hard pivots, right? I am not built for a pivot. In my case, I was very clear with my team saying, hey, we're going to go after this idea. If it works out, great. If it doesn't work out, we're going to fold. We're not going to pivot this into something else because I don't know anything else. This is all I know, right? So that was super clear for us. Product market fit, I think it's an 80-20 game. You need to come in with an 80% solid understanding of this is what we are going to build. The last 20%, you can't be rigid about. Your customer has to tell you what works, what doesn't work. And having many, many, many conversations. So, which are even before we put the product out, before the product was completely built, like, Sarah and I would spend 10, 15 hours in a week hanging out with the product and engineering people. And after that, they want us out of the room so that they can build, right? So we were kicked out of the room. And what would we do instead? Go talk to customers. That's another tip I would give for, people who want to start a company. Talk to customers. You don't need a product to talk to customers. You just need an idea and a willing audience. And the willing audience is right there for you. You just have to pick up the phone and call. People want to know what you want to work on, right? And you can show your idea and get 50 data points in response before you even write the first line of code. So we did that a lot, talked to a lot of customers. So I think that's part of the product market fit, getting that customer feedback and giving it back to engineering, saying, hey, this is what we need to build. This is what we need to build. And shaping the last 20% before we have design partners. Once you have design partners, they drive the remaining 20%. It's they tell you what needs to be built. They tell you what the experience is like. They tell you what they love and what they hate. So, and that's true even today, right? What is the job of a product manager? The job of the product manager is to point the boat in the right direction. And part of it is just keep the momentum going. The other part is hey, what are we missing here? And the customer's voice.
I have one more VC question. So
yes.
I think I talked to a lot of young founders who are just getting started, and their impression of raising money is that you go out and raise money, and it might take a little while to raise money, but then you just get money. And then now you have some money to play around with. And from talking to you and what I know about the market, explain how that's different. What else comes with that? And basically, you're getting money, but in exchange, what do the VCs get, or what's your responsibility to them?
So you got to take that responsibility very, very seriously, because it's very easy to paint the venture capital in a villainous way. And I think if that's your mental model, you're not going to be successful. I'll tell you that out the gate. If you think venture capitalists are not good people, it's hard, they don't like my idea, they're not good people, you gotten something wrong. So first of all, right, that. Okay. But in general, when you get capital, you give control. It's not just equity, it is board seats. That is the second part. A board seat is a control mechanism on the company to say, hey, look, we have, you're the driver, but we have control over the car as well. So that is an important thing to understand.
Because it's a fundamental decision. If you founded a company and once you raise money, then theoretically you can get fired from the company that you started.
You should be in a position where you could get fired. I always tell my team that, hey, I have to earn my job every single year, right? It's a very fair outcome. If there are 3 owners in a business, if the 2 of you are 2 independent VCs, I'm the third partner. Hey, look, if I don't do a good job, why should I run the company? Why should I be the CEO? There's no reason why I should be the CEO. The next CEO should come in and do the job right? So the challenge becomes if you understand the business as well as I do. That's where the friction is, right? Okay. But in principle, you give up control.
That organically brings us back to the business problem that you're tackling.
Yeah.
Can you kind of give us a sense of we made all this progress in the last 30 years in supply chains and the digitization and the connectivity, all of that, and yet you guys are emerging, coming on the scene now. What's the thesis? What's the problem that you're tackling? Who's your ICP?
Yeah. So I'll go back to the same thing. Like, buy versus build. In supply chain today, to solve a problem, you need the data infrastructure. You need a massive algorithm infrastructure, right? Which is like, hey, massive lines of OR code, some heuristic code here, some machine learning there, some statistics somewhere else. And then you need to put it all together, and you need to have an experience as an application. If you're building a single application software company, you build one at a time and sell each piece of software separately. We are fundamentally challenging that idea, Vijay, saying within buy and build, there's an answer in the middle where we're going to give you a platform that has everything you need to go compose software that will solve the business problem. So, the data layer, the complete data layer, and data has many, many elements to it, right, today. Pulling data, managing data, shaping data, right? That layer. And then you have the algorithms layer. We are use case agnostic. We want to be the Hugging Face for supply chain, right? If you know Hugging Face, that's where everybody's landing their, LLM models today, right? So if you go check out Hugging Face, we want to be the private Hugging Face for supply chain. And then we give a whole bunch of tooling that will allow you to go from the algorithm to a software in no time. If you need to train machine learning models, we have the infrastructure for that. So we're thinking we want to be the shopping mall where you get everything in one shot, right? And solve the problem that the business has. So if you're a data scientist, OR scientist, industrial engineer, a data analyst, planner, all of you come and solve the problems for the business.
When you announced when you announced the $23 million raise, and then you also put on your website some clients, are there examples of some? Can you make it concrete? Give us some examples of what some of your clients are doing with this. Like what supply chain problems are they solving? So, how has it changed in their process?
Right. So I know it's a lot to digest, Vijay. So
this is
in case
fun.
you're puzzled, I'm like, what is this guy saying? Right. So that's when I started the company, I said it's a very ambitious project. People should think that we are crazy for attempting this, and that's fine, right? If we pull it off, it's great. If not, it's fine. And that's the job of a startup. So, Mike, to make it real, I think pick any modeling use case, pick any planning use case, pick any execution intelligence use case. So I'll pick an execution intelligence use case. We have a large CPG company where every morning they have a bunch of orders, like say 10,000 orders for the sake of discussion, that come in. And if the product is in inventory at the right location, you just give the product from that inventory, subtract the inventory. That's simple algebra. But what if the product is not available? What do you do then? One of the things you can do is substitute the product. How do you substitute the product? You can use machine learning to do smart product substitution, right? A for B, B for C. What are good affinity analysis to say, hey, what are good products that are close to each other? So use machine learning to do product substitution, and then build a new order book. And that new order book has to be smartly converted into shipments, full truckloads. So that new workflow, today everything sits in SAP. You get what you get. If you don't get, move on. Journey. Any scientist, and this is not rocket science, any good OR scientist will walk in, and a machine learning scientist will walk in and say, if the two of them are sitting and looking at this problem, they say, hey, I have a part A problem that's machine learning. There's a part B problem that's OR. We should solve this problem together. And we're like saying, great. If those two guys come together and ladies come together and solve that problem, it'll be a 1-year project. Once they leave, the customer can't maintain it. In Lyric, we want to get that done in 3 months. And the software will be maintainable, can be managed by the IT department. That's use case number 1. Use case number 2 is your classic, supply planning, demand planning kind of use cases where it's like, hey, even today, if you go and look at what's inside these packaged software, Mike, you will be disappointed. You will not be encouraged. You'll be disappointed on how, forget the marketing content. Don't look at the website. Don't listen to the salespeople, right? Go talk to the tech architect of these software companies. If you get your hands on them, like Ask them, how are they building it? How are they solving it? And you'll find out that, man, this is 10 years old technology. This is 15 years old technology. And we want to undo that. If you were building a package software, that's still true. Even you would do the same way, because machine learning is somewhat different. I don't think the world has fully understood how machine learning is different from any other piece of software, right? And the reason it's different is you have to train machine learning models. You don't train them once and forget it. You got to train them every month, every quarter, keep them fresh. When you buy package software, there's no infrastructure to keep them fresh. There's no such thing. How do you do that?
Yeah.
Right? So those are the things we are tackling, Vijay. There are many things, the data, the algorithm, the compute. There are 100 things to worry about. And it's very hard to be in the world of application software and solve those 100 problems. So we're going to undo that, unpack the whole world of application software into a platform. And we think it opens a lot of degrees of freedom to solve problems more freely.
Excellent. So I noticed that you've talked about your company as being AI first.
Yes.
So tell the audience kind of, when you say that, what do you mean?
Yeah. So AI, it's also a mindset. I really think, when we said, hey, AI, right? Obviously everybody gets twisted. And in our first wave of marketing, we said AI is algorithmic intelligence. This is like putting the full data power and the full stack of algorithm power and the full stack of compute power to solve your problems. That's what we call AI. And the algorithm could be A or B or C. If it comes from Gen AI, it comes from Gen AI. I'm not going to be obsessed about which part of the branch of mathematics is being used to solve the problem. That is story number one. What's that evolving into now is basically algorithmic intelligence meets agentic intelligence. Now, see, I'm getting good at marketing. Right? But we have to acknowledge, I think one of the things that I can't explain why, but the OR types, right? And that includes all of us. We have been the slowest to adopt anything new. I don't know why, right? It's just been like my empirical observation that, I think the world of operations research, my entire career is built on the foundation of operations research. But somehow, when machine learning was new, we took 7 years to understand machine learning and say, we're going to use machine learning. Why? Why were we not the first ones out the gate, right? Using it. Can't explain it. I think another moment is coming now with agentic AI. LLMs were interesting. Gen AI in general was interesting. But this agentic framework that sits on top of Gen AI is going to change the world around us. Let's not lose this opportunity, right? The world is watching. Fun things can be done. Some will work, some will not. I know that some things won't work. There'll be a lot of failures to talk about, but be the eternal optimist, right? To find the opportunity here. I think there's a lot of opportunity to start some amazing companies. So what we're saying is, in the world of supply chain intelligence, we're trying to see where can we apply agentic intelligence in the right place, in the right way. I think that's super important, because if you do it right, there's a big prize. If you do it wrong, you won't exist. So you got to have good judgment.
Well, Ganesh, this has been a terrific conversation. I'm super excited about not just what you're doing with Lyric, but also simply the pace of change and having people from the OR community not waiting to get swamped by that wave, but trying to get ahead of it. That's exciting.
Yes, it is really exciting. We're excited about what this can do to the world of operations research, data science. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks for joining us today, Ganesh.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Decision Intelligence Lab podcast. If you got value from our conversation, please like and share. And if you'd like to subscribe directly to the podcast, just send us an email at decisionintelligencepodcast@gmail.com.